Hey everyone, welcome to another video. This is already part 2 on Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. In this part we're going to talk about the importance of chaos. We'll begin this video with a short summary of the first part and then an introduction to the second part, followed by some of the most important concepts of Nietzsche's work, such as the Overman and, in my opinion, one of his most interesting concepts, the last man, and how this relates to the importance of chaos. And then we will look at the role the state plays in this whole history, and then also how one can kind of emerge from the problem that we're going to discuss in this video. What's most important to remember of the first part is that Nietzsche believed that good and evil are a relative concept. According to him, there's no fixed definition of good and evil, and these concepts are basically socially constructed. In relation to these concepts, we should be careful, according to Nietzsche, of the tarantulas. According to Nietzsche, these are individuals or groups of people that try to impose their idea of good and evil upon other people, and they do not do this because they want to improve mankind or because they're loving and caring. Instead, they basically want to do this because they want to gain more power themselves. If you want to get to know more about the idea of the tarantulas, then please have a look at the first part on Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which I will try to link somewhere in this video, otherwise you can also find it in the description. Our discussion in this second part is going to be loosely related to the discussion on the tarantulas. This is the case because, according to Nietzsche, the tarantulas, they kind of want to control everything. They want everyone to be equal, they want everything to be arranged. And besides the tarantulas, according to Nietzsche, there are some other entities that are promoting this development, such as the state. And Nietzsche believed that this is a very dangerous development, and it's also almost irreversible. And basically what's so dangerous about it is that it can lead to the society of the last man. Nietzsche really believed that it should be the main purpose of almost every individual to continuously try to improve him or herself. And if one would continue to do so, then this person would eventually evolve into the Overman, or the Übermensch in German, which is of course a term that has been misused in the past. But basically the Overman is somebody that is beyond good and evil. So someone that can decide his own morality, can decide for himself what is good and evil. However, according to Nietzsche, developing into the Overman is not really an easy endeavor. And therefore he wrote, "Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss." And this abyss basically is the situation of the last man. And this last man we can kind of see as the complete opposite of the Overman. Whereas the Overman decides everything for himself, the last man basically doesn't really decide anything any longer. He just lives his life, but nothing much is really happening. He wrote, "Alas, there cometh the time when man will no longer launch the arrow of his longing beyond man, and the string of his bow will have unlearned to whiz." According to Nietzsche, in this abyss of the last man, man will think that he has discovered happiness. But according to Nietzsche, this is not really the case because life has become too easy or too structured and too organized. Nietzsche believed, however, that man should still have chaos in themselves. And that's why he wrote, "I tell you, one must still have chaos in one, to give birth to a dancing star. I tell you, ye still have chaos in you." Basically, because this last man does no longer have any chaos in him, then Nietzsche argued that he can also no longer give birth to any star. "There cometh the time when man will no longer give birth to any star. Alas, there cometh the time of the most despicable man, who can no longer despise himself. Lo, I show you the last man." So here's a short overview of a comparison between these two kinds of men, basically. So on the one side we have the Overman, who is beyond good and evil, who's creative and original, who still has chaos in himself and therefore gives birth to dancing stars. and who's also continuously trying to improve him or herself. And on the other side, we have the last man, who is, well, does not really decide for himself what is good and evil. Instead, this is decided for him by the tarantulas, for example, or by the state. He or she has a rather easy life, which is structured and organized. So there's not really any chaos, but according to Nietzsche, they can therefore also not give birth to any stars. At the same time, they also do not want to be rich, they do not want to be poor, they do not want to be powerful or weak. They do not want to be anything, basically, because they are all too burdensome. I believe Nietzsche really tried to warn us of the society of the last man, because this kind of society is not really moving towards any goal or purpose. It's just basically existing to, well, satisfy the happiness of its own population, while according to Nietzsche, this happiness is not really true happiness. He wrote that the earth have then become small, and on it there hopped the last man, who maketh everything small. His species is ineradicable, like that of the ground flea. The last man liveth longest. We have discovered happiness, says the last man, and blinked thereby. In a sense, of course, the society of the last man is not the worst possible society. As Nietzsche also argued, basically people in this society, they live the longest, they live in warm places, they are kind to each other, and they basically themselves also believe that they have discovered happiness. However, at the same time, such a society will also not really promote any creativity or originality. In a sense, of course, it would not promote chaos. And this is where Nietzsche really trying to warn us. He believed that such a society that does not promote creativity and originality is really not the best for us. The Nietzsche meant that we could, if we were to live in a society of the last man, we could not evolve into the Overman, which would, according to Nietzsche, be a really sad thing for humanity, basically. This emergence of the society of the last man, according to Nietzsche, it also kind of goes hand in hand with another development, which is the development of the new idol. So according to Nietzsche, mankind have killed our old idol, which was, of course, God, and we kind of try to replace this old idol with a new idol, which is the state in this case. And this new idol, it also serves the purpose to, well, protect the happiness of the last man. She wrote in relation to the new idol, "Weary ye became of the conflict, and now your weariness serveth the new idol. Everything will it give you, if ye worship it, the new idol. Thus it purchaseth the lustre of your virtue and the glance of your proud eyes." So in this sense, we can really see these two developments, the development of the society of the last man and the development of the new idol, go hand in hand. So as soon as the society of the last man kind of evolves, then these last men will appoint the state as their new idol, because the state can kind of protect their happiness, and thereby the state will also protect the society of the last man. Thereby it can then become increasingly difficult for mankind to kind of emerge from this abyss of the last man, according to Nietzsche. And as you will see, Nietzsche was also not really a big fan of the state. He called the state the coldest of all cold monsters. Coldly lieth it also, and this lie creepeth from its mouth. I, the state, am the people. So I suppose it's true that the state kind of represents the last man, but according to Nietzsche, the last man is not really the people. The people are those people that are trying to improve themselves, that are trying to be original or creative, and that are kind of moving towards the Overman. In relation to the state, Nietzsche also wrote, "Destroyers are they who lay snares for many and call it the state. They hang a sword and 100 cravings over them. Where there is still a people, there the state is not understood, but hated as the evil eye and as sin against laws and customs." So as you may have noticed, Nietzsche strongly opposed any entity that would prevent the individual from developing him or herself into the best version of him or herself. So in part 1 this were of course the tarantulas, and in this part the last man and the state are criticized for the same reasons. They further define the state as the state, I call it, where all are poison drinkers, the good and the bad, the state where all lose themselves, the good and the bad, the state where the slow suicide of all is called life. I think Nietzsche wrote this because everyone would be poison drinkers, because everyone would kind of be poisoned to such an extent that they would all be aiming for the wrong goals that are promoted by the state and that are also supported by the society of the last man. I mentioned before, people in such a society would not really be moving towards any important goal, according to Nietzsche. He wrote, "Just see these superfluous ones. Wealth they acquire and become poorer thereby. Power they seek for, and above all the lever of power. Much money, these important ones." So they would basically be trying to acquire more wealth, more money, but they would not really be getting any richer because the goals they are trying to pursue, according to Nietzsche, are not really important. What makes it even worse, actually, is that these goals that they are pursuing, while they're not really important, they are kind of clambering over each other while they're pursuing these goals. So Nietzsche wrote, "See them clamber, these nimble apes. They clamber over one another and thus scuffle into the mud and the abyss. Towards the throne they all strive. It's their madness, as if happiness sat on the throne. Oft times sitteth filth on the throne, and oft times also the throne on filth." Also really curious to hear what you think. Do you think that if Nietzsche were to be alive today, that he would kind of see our society as the society of the last man? Or do you think that Nietzsche would think that we are still on the right path? So yeah, please let me know in the comments below. I think that our society definitely has a lot of the characteristics similar to the society of the last man as it was well defined by Nietzsche. I also don't think that this is a really strange development because most people, including myself, would most of the times prefer such a society because it's so, well, comfortable, I guess. This is of course also why it's so interesting to read Nietzsche, because after reading a book like Thus Spoke Zarathustra, then you really start to question kind of the goals that you're aiming for in your life and the things that you think are important. Most of the time I would not really be aware of the importance of chaos, but if you read a book like Thus Spoke Zarathustra, then you kind of start to understand why chaos is important as well. Spoke Zarathustra, when the prophet Zarathustra went down to some villages and he started to talk to the villagers about the last man. He tried to warn them about the development of their society into the society of the last man. Then the villagers replied by saying, "Give us this last man, O Zarathustra." They called out, "Make us into these last men." I think an important question that we can ask ourselves now is whether the development of our society into a society similar to this society of the last man is really a development that we can stop, because at the same time we have the state that is promoting such a development. We have most of society, including myself of course most of the time, that are also promoting such development. So how can we kind of stop this development, and is it even possible? So Nietzsche argued that for those that did not want to partake in such a society, there are still a few options available. According to Nietzsche, they could first of all physically remove themselves from such a society. He argued that open still remained the earth for great souls. Empty are still many sides for the lone ones and twain ones, around which floated the odor of tranquil seas. At the same time, they could also remove themselves from such an society not by physically going away, but by kind of separating themselves from society in a different sense, by not partaking in the goals that this society is pursuing. So instead of pursuing more wealth, more power, they could kind of, well, just be happy with what they have and not really partake in this struggle. Therefore Nietzsche wrote, "Verily, he who possesseth little is so much the less possessed. Blessed be moderate poverty. There where the state sees it, pray look thither, my brethren. Do ye not see it, the rainbow and the bridges of the Superman?" Yeah, I hope you're still with me. It was kind of a long talk. I think Nietzsche made some very confrontational remarks when he was talking about the society of the last man. And I think we should really look at our own society and kind of ask ourselves whether we are not the last man ourselves. According to Nietzsche, man was traveling on a rope over an abyss. So this rope would lead to the society of the Superman. And if we would take a wrong step, we would fall into the abyss of the last man. So the question that we can ask ourselves is whether we have fallen into the abyss. And at the same time, we also have to ask whether we actually want to get out of this abyss, because for most people, including myself most of the time, the society of the last man does not really sound too bad. And whatever our opinion about this society is, I think it's still very important to be aware of these ideas of Nietzsche so that we can kind of look towards our society from a different perspective as well. I think at the same time, whatever our opinion is about our society or of these ideas of Nietzsche, I think it's important for us to be original and creative. And I think we should really listen to Nietzsche and not forget to still have chaos in us, so that we can give birth to a dancing star. So thank you very much for watching this video. I've really enjoyed making this video, and I'm really curious what your opinions are about this whole idea of the last man. So please let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next video as well.